to you by the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and today we are going to be talking about teen dating violence prevention with Nick Silveri-Hiller, our prevention manager here at PCADV. So welcome, Nick, and thank you for joining us today.
Of course, super glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Let's just dive right in. And I'd like to start by defining what we mean when we say teen dating violence. So, what are the ages that we're talking about? What are the types of relationships that we're referring to here?
Yeah, many different studies when you see like percentages will kind of have its own age group, but typically just very generally what we're talking about when we talk about teen dating violence is are folks from, 11 to 18-ish generally, kind of in that middle school to high school range of folks. And when we talk about dating, dating can look like a bunch of different things, but really the essence is any type of intimate relationship that someone is in. As I'm sure many folks know, a lot of younger folks, this is a time when they're experimenting with relationships, trying to figure all that out. So that's why, there's a particular focus on teen dating violence every February.
Wonderful. So people sometimes think about abuse in kind of binary terms. A relationship is abusive or it's not abusive. But in reality, relationships really exist more on a spectrum. So can you describe what that spectrum looks like as it relates to teen dating, and what kind of behaviors or patterns of behaviors may put a relationship closer to the healthy end or the abusive end of that spectrum?
For sure. Yeah, love is respect is a research that I'm going to be talking about a ton this talk because I think they're one of the best national resources on teen dating violence, and they break it down with a healthy, healthy, unhealthy, and abusive. I think it's important to first say like there's no clear-cut lines between these things. Again, it's a spectrum. Um, but overall, on one side of the spectrum of healthy relationships, it's about, equality in the relationship, trust in the relationship, excuse me, and that each person in the relationship has, their own autonomy in that relationship. On the other end, the two defining things that we always say, particularly at PCDV, about how do we define abuse is that it's about power and control over another person. And that can look like a lot of things. You know, uh, I'm not in my teenage years anymore, and I'm sure there's a lot of other, things that are very particular to teenagers now. But, any type of, isolating a person, manipulating that person, making, accusations, trying to have power over another person in an intimate relationship is where it goes to abuse. Where unhealthy is um, more of struggling for control, but not necessarily having that complete control and power over someone. But either way, wherever you are, we should really, of course, trying to strive for the healthiest relationships we can be in.
Great. And so are there any behaviors specific to teens, or even young adults that uh, you might want to encourage folks to keep an eye out for when they're considering how they feel about the relationship, how healthy the relationship might be, that we identify as something that is really like a teen specific thing to just to look out for?
Yeah, I want to shout out if there are younger folks or even parents watching this to, go check out Love is Respect because they have a whole quiz that you can take to kind of suss out how healthy or unhealthy the relationship may be. I think, a lot of times when you're that young, you don't have a lot of you may know something's off, but you don't have the vocabulary to explain it. So I think a lot of times, it's important to kind of go back to, even if it doesn't sound like abuse, going back to thinking, is this about power and control in this like relationship? Um, and, obviously social media is, you know, uh, another facet of this that, you know, um, to be honest, I'm an older, it's been a long time since I was a kid, and I'm sure I'm very out of the know on what's the cool apps and all of that stuff. But I think no matter what technology changes, no matter what what's going on in the world, like you can always go back to thinking about how if this is being used about in a way to control another person. So we can, the ways that we see kind of abusive patterns happening doesn't increase or necessarily decrease with the changes in technology. It's just about it looking different. And so that's my kind of framework is always, I may not know all the technical apps or what things are being used, but I can always go back to the framework. Is this being used to control and have power over another person? And that's when we can start like identifying where, if this is abusive or unhealthy or healthy relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a really great guidepost to think about, especially when it comes to technology and abuse. Like you mentioned, that's going to be changing all of the time, and there's also different like norms that we see sometimes come up among teens with how they use it, or some it might be normal in some friend groups to like maybe share a location or share a password or something, which might not in itself be an unhealthy thing or an abusive behavior. But if you think about it from that standpoint of like, well, am I sharing my location so that they can control me? Or are they asking for my password so that they can control who I'm talking to? I think is just such a great way to look at it because no matter how those norms change, no matter how the technology changes, that's always something that folks can come back to, the teens can come back to, the parents can come back to, anybody to say like, just to like take a look at something and say, wait a minute, this doesn't feel quite right. Is that because I feel like they're doing this in order to control me? So that's a really great piece of advice, I think. Yeah. So I know for PCADV, we like to remind folks that when it comes to both domestic violence and teen dating violence, that prevention is possible and even more so that it's necessary. So prevention is a really big priority for us. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about PCADV's approach to teen dating violence prevention, in particular, in the way that we're putting a focus on creating safer environments in schools and communities.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, historically, the movement against violence and violence prevention really focused on only educating individual students on healthy and unhealthy relationships. Well, that's really important, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but we've realized over, in the past, I would say 10 to 5 years or 5 to 10 years, I should say, is that, what's going to really make a long-term lasting change is actually changing the environment that the students are in or the young people are in. And so we've kind of tried to refocus our prevention efforts towards how do we look at changing an environment or a climate. It doesn't have to be a school because we know teenagers go to many places that are not just schools. And so, but any place that folks are to look at and like change that those environments. So one of the really but before I go into that, it's from I believe originally SafeWorks had this quote or PeaceWorks their Camp PeaceWorks had the slogan awareness plus action equals change. And I really like that framing of it because yes, we need to make sure that folks are aware of this enormous issue within our communities of intimate partner violence. But we also need to take action to change the environment so that we can have that change that we want. Um, and so some of my favorite, particularly my favorite is, a lot of folks are moving towards what's called like hotspot mapping. There was a interesting study a while ago on basically curriculums and hotspot mapping and kind of comparing the two. And so there was a study done where one high school got nothing, the control group. Another high school just got a curriculum. Another high school got the curriculum and hotspot mapping, and the fourth school just got hotspot mapping. And what the research showed was that the schools where nothing happened or just a curriculum happened were actually pretty similar in the the long-term change. It really only lasted like 6 months of any type of behavioral change or knowledge change. But when you added that hotspot mapping onto the work, it had, a much longer effect that went like much further than just like 6 months. I think it was up to like a year or two. Um, and oh, I should explain what hotspot mapping is before. So hotspot mapping is it can look like many different things, but basically it's a way to map out a environment, and you ask the folks who spend a lot of time in that environment to identify where places where they may feel safe or unsafe, or places that they enjoy going to or don't enjoy going to. Um, but the point of it is to kind of just have a map uh, of a community in order to make changes in that community. So typically, we see it in the example that I was just talking about. It was they had a map of the school and they gave students a map of that school, and they would color in red in places in the school that they didn't feel comfortable. Um, I think yellow where they felt okay, and then green where they felt safe. And so folks would compile all of this information and see, oh, the students aren't feeling very safe in this one hallway on the, west wing of the school. Um, so let's focus some attention on can we make that safer? Is it that they need a teacher there? Is it that the lights are really dim there and we just need to change the lights, or whatever the case may be. Um, and there's many ways to do it. I know some programs have done just a list, just say where do you feel safe, where you don't feel safe, and have students fill it in. And also, we've had programs do, I think it's called like photo voice. So instead of mapping it, you just have students take a pictures of their environment, of their school, of their neighborhoods, and you can get some information of like, why did you take a picture of that building? And they're like, well, there's something about that building that's weird, or there's, a bunch of vacant lots, or this, bunch of lights on my block don't work. And so I took a picture of all the broken lights. So there's many different ways to gather that info, but the point is trying to get an idea of um, how we can better the environment for students or for young folks.
That's such a cool approach. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and like the impact that the environment can have on furthering even the impact of the curriculum. That the curriculum alone wasn't enough, that the combination of those things really helped make a bigger impact. That's pretty sweet and good to know. So we have a question from the audience I'm going to pose to you now. It's related to media literacy, which nowadays is super important. There's information coming at us from all kinds of different sources. And so this participant asked, how can I teach my teens to view their media through a critical lens so they don't normalize unhealthy dating behaviors they may see there?
No, for sure. Yeah, I'll be upfront. I'm not a parent, so I can only, give from that point of view. But I think kind of going back to our other conversation of like, using the framework of power and control, we can kind of use whatever we're seeing in the media and talking about it through that framework. If there's a relationship in a show they're watching and it's kind of, makes you feel weird, and you can use that as a teaching point to be like, this, what's up with this relationship? Are they having, you know, is there control and power dynamics here that are making this relationship unhealthy? Um, so I think kind of, I think always asking questions is like the best way to like, get to help tease out a like critical lens for folks, is just asking questions and seeing where it goes. So I think using that framework could be really helpful.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that utilizing things that you notice in the media, especially if it's something that you're watching together as a starting point for a conversation. Because I think I'm also, full disclosure, not a parent. But even just thinking about like my niece, like sometimes conversations about dating with like an adult is an uncomfortable thing for a teen, right? And for the adult too, like how do I even broach this topic with them? And I like for me, I think that um common like media has been a good way to actually like launch into some of those like a little bit more difficult conversations to start because you have kind of like a neutral space from which to talk about it. You're not asking them directly about their relationship. You're saying, hey, we watched this on screen. Like, what do you think about how this person treated the person they're in relationship? Or like, how would that make you feel if, your partner, acted that way towards you? Or have you ever noticed any of your friends groups, like experiencing something like we're seeing here? There's just so many good opportunities in that media. So I think talking about the media that they're viewing can also help provide that critical lens because if you're sparking those questions, then they're going to maybe think about it in a different way than they might have thought about it just watching it on their own, or watching it with friends that might not be having those like critical conversations afterwards. Um, so yeah, thanks, Nick. Appreciate you answering the audience question for us. I also wanted to ask about our Coaching Boys into Men, and the new program that we're piloting, Coaching Girls Beyond the Game programs. So if you could tell us a little bit about how those two initiatives fit into our prevention approach at PCADV.
Yeah, for sure. So, Coaching Boys into Men is Futures Without Violence's program. We didn't create it, but we are big fans of it. And so, Coaching Boys into Men is a program based on working with young athletic men in athletics programs um, to have the coach to help guide the coach to have conversations around relationships, around consent, around masculinity, like healthy expressions of masculinity, um, to young folks. And we really like it, even though it's, there's a big part of it that is education based and a little curriculum based. What's really excellent about it is having a person in, important leadership to young folks, having these deep conversations. I know, a lot of times in high school and even middle school, a coach can be, such an important figure, like adult figure in young folks' lives, that having them have these, important conversations really demonstrates the importance of having healthy relationships and talking through this stuff. Um, so that's been out for a while and it's been really fantastic. A lot of our local programs implement it. And it's completely free online. If you go to Futures Without Violence, you can find it. Um, and we have started, well, we did pilot and we're going to be releasing soon a kind of companion piece called Coaching Girls Beyond the Game, which focuses on women's athletics in, middle school, mostly high school. And it kind of mimic or mirrors the lessons that Coaching Boys into Men talks about. Um, but, talking about, healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, empowerment. And it's really, it's been really successful and having those two companion programs have been really, really awesome. And yeah.
Wonderful. And I know that some of PCDV's local programs are also taking an approach to teen dating violence prevention that is actually getting teens themselves involved. So if you could also tell us a little bit about those youth advisory boards and the impact that you're seeing at the programs that are implementing those.
Yeah, youth advisory boards are another fantastic way to like empower youth and make some of that community level change. One of the things that we think is really important within the prevention program in PCDV is having the community lead the prevention efforts, and oftentimes I feel like we can go to a community and say, we know exactly what you need. And the community's like, actually, we don't need that. We need this. And we don't know what to do with that. So so youth advisory board is, I think, a really fantastic way to have youth inform you what they need in their communities and you know, what can prevention look like and what should prevention look like uh, to them and what's specific to them. Like we were talking about earlier, um, it's been a while since I was a teen, so like I don't know exactly what words folks are using, what apps folks are using, all of these things. So having younger folks be like, actually, nowadays that's kind of we don't really say it like that. That's kind of means a whole different thing, or this is a better way to say it, or we actually need more education around this particular topic. So having them in kind of the lead position is, I think, a fantastic way to do that work.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, Nick, to go back to the question that we got about teaching teens to think critically about the media that they're consuming. Could that be a potential place where a youth advisory board can make an impact? I'm sure those boards are being guided by staff from our local programs. And so could that potentially be a space where those teens could talk with advocates about like how they're viewing media, what they're seeing that might be concerning, to come up with strategies, maybe even from the teens about how they could help other teens to think differently about the things that they're viewing and think about them more critically.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think any knowledge you can get from directly from the group of folks that you're trying to work with is excellent. And yeah, like saying, what are you watching? How does this relate? And also that made me also think of, having, youth advisory boards or committees, whatever, version of that you want to you're using. There can also be a great opportunity for peer-to-peer like education and relationship and work. So it's not just, an advocate from another program or a teacher or, an adult, the only one kind of doing the education or this work. Having it come from a peer is also really powerful. And, of course, we give the youth all the tools that they will need to have those conversations the best they can, but having that peer-to-peer discussion is really important.
Yeah. So if there are advocates from programs listening that might not yet have these programs implemented, or educators or just other community members who would be interested in implementing some of these strategies in their communities, how could they get started?
Well, if you're a local program member of the PCADV, you can reach out to me and the prevention team at preventionteam@pcadv.org. That's our email that goes to the whole team. And if you're a local community member listening in, I would say reach out to your local program. They will be the best resource for you because they're local. They know what it's like to work in that community. Pennsylvania is a very big state, and so we can give as much kind of ideas and information as PCDV prevention team. But again, when we talk about having communities lead the work, having the local community lead it. So I would say reach out to those folks. Um, and, I think just beginning by also, looking at your own community and seeing where things could be different and envisioning, you know, sometimes I say just imagine like a world without violence and what would that look like? And like really think about that. Because I think we sometimes forget that that's the goal, right? Like that's the ultimate goal and just, use that as the guidepost, like use that as the place that you're aiming for and try to do what you can with to get there.
Yeah, and we'll if you are looking for your local program, you can find that on PCDV's website. We'll drop the link to the page on our website where you can find your local program. You can search by zip code, address, county, whatever you prefer. And switching gears a little bit, we focused a lot of our conversation on these broader community approaches to violence prevention. But I also wanted to ask about some strategies for parents and caregivers. So, what are some things that parents and caregivers can do to help their teens navigate these dating relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very, like we kind of talked about earlier, having those conversations with them, as early as as early as you can and age appropriate, and just, but using kind of, I think you said it, Lauren, you did say it. Sorry, I don't think you did say it. But, using teachable moments when you can, to make it, not so personal. Um, and using the resources that we have, and taking a moment to also educate yourself on, on relationships. I'll plug Love is Respect one more time. They're fantastic. We also at our website, we also have a bunch of information on you know, caregivers and parents and how to have some of those conversations. We used to have many years ago, we used to have a app that was dedicated to these conversations. But we decided to move that all to our website. So all of that information is still there and really relevant and awesome. And it's just another tool to kind of have those conversations, and just to have that in your resources when you're talking to folks.
Wonderful. Yeah. And we will drop the link for those strategies for parents and caregivers in the comments as well. So, Nick, I'd like to wrap up just by talking about how folks can find help. So, if you are a teen that is in a relationship that you might think is unhealthy or potentially even abusive, or even if somebody, a friend of yours, you are afraid that they might be in a relationship that is unhealthy, abusive, where can they turn to find help?
Yeah, of course. I think, of course, our local programs are work with all folks, right? All age groups. And they can provide you some help, some guidance with that. Particularly if you're experiencing, abuse, you can, find out the resources from them. I think you just said you put in the link where you can find all the local ones. So you can find your local program, you can call the national hotline and they'll connect you to it. And then again, um, you know, if you're starting to, see some things that aren't making you comfortable in your relationship or another person's relationship, again, you can go to our website, you can go to Love is Respect to kind of, get more resources for yourself, um, to, to understand it. But I think the most important thing that I always tell folks is, leaving an abusive relationship isn't easy and extremely hard and may take a very long time. So even if you're seeing abuse in a friend's relationship and you may get frustrated that they're staying in a relationship much longer than you think is okay, it's really important to still be connected with that friend in some way because one of the major um, uh, tactics of abuse is isolation from their support systems. So, when many years ago when I would do, community-based education with younger folks, like that was the one thing I always tried to say about how to help a friend is, you know, you can talk to them, you can give them resources, but it's going to be most important that you just support them and make sure that they don't get isolated from their support systems.
Yeah, I think that's such a great piece of advice and could also be applicable to parents too in a slightly different way and might be difficult for parents to, if you see that your child or even a friend of your child that you care about is in a relationship that you have concerns about, um, you know, respecting like their autonomy and being there for them until they're able to fully end that relationship, is really important because you don't want to just, shut them down in a way where they might, be seeing that person then behind your back because they don't want to tell you that they haven't ended this relationship yet or run into some kind of thing. So I think overall, just like keeping that door open to anybody that is in an abusive relationship and saying, I'm here for you when you're ready to talk, or I'm here for you when you are ready to leave. I'm here for you to support your decisions, no matter what those decisions are, is really critical for teens that are in abusive relationships or for adults that you care about that might be in an abusive relationship too, to really leave that door open and let them know that you're there for them and you support them and their decisions. So Yeah. Any final thoughts, Nick, on Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month?
Thank you for having me here and inviting me. I love talking about all the ways that we can prevent violence from happening. So, you know, it's my favorite thing to talk about. So I love the opportunity to talk about it. And again, if there's anything that folks have questions about, feel free to reach out to us. If we're not the right person to answer it, we'll find the right person to answer it. But yeah, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of your prevention expertise with us. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We look forward to seeing you next month. Bye, everyone.